Hey everybody, welcome to Creature Clash, where we talk about everything from D&D to SCP and everything in between. My name is Alex.
My name is Dawn.
My name is Adam.
And I'm Trey.
And today we're going to be talking about a little something called Frankenstein's monster. But if you're more interested in learning about any references we may have or just a little bit about how we got started, go ahead and check out episode 0. It's not required, but if you want a little bit more information on who we are, that's where you go. So guys, Frankenstein's monster. Not called Frankenstein. Before all the book nerds start coming out in droves and carrying their pitchforks and telling us it's not Frankenstein, it's Frankenstein's monster. You got to keep that in mind, because there are a lot of people going to be upset if we mess that up. So what is Frankenstein's monster? Essentially, it is a monster created by Dr. Victor Frankenstein, using a bunch of different dead body parts and organs assembled together into a new human body and then brought to life with electricity. Now, I have a few issues with this. So, issue number 1, could a dead organ that, mind you, has been buried in the ground be restart with electricity like that?
I would say it depends on how long the body had been there.
Because I think I think in the book, he used fresh corpses. But I feel like if your organs aren't put on ice immediately after you pass, then within like an hour or two, they would definitely be like completely gone, like unsalvageable.
Yeah, I mean, your cells in your body die pretty quick after death, so.
Exactly. So this guy really thought he was going to just take all these body parts and sew them together and then boom. I mean, I guess he put them in the correct order and made sure they were all hooked up, but even still, I don't think that a quick jolt to the system would be able to bring anything back to life like that.
So, what would?
Magic. It's always magic is the answer to everything.
Aside,
So like you have things like defibrillators, which restart your heart.
Yeah, but even those, you gotta use them quick.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Maybe it depends on how long the body, like Trey said, how long the parts have been gone. But I feel like it would have to be like quick. So in D&D, there's a similar thing to Frankenstein's monster called a flesh golem. So Adam, you want to tell us what makes a flesh golem or a golem in general?
Well, flesh golems are made of flesh and muscle and all that good stuff, and you really just stitch it in a humanoid form, and then with some sort of enchanting magic, you can create a flesh golem that typically obeys your commands. I mean, depends how good of a wizard or artificer or whatever you are, how good you are at it, can make it follow pretty much all your commands. There are like official magical items, like there's the name escapes me, but there's like a tome of like how to create a golem, and you can create a golem that serves under you that obeys all of your commands, and you can create it in whatever material you wish. So I guess it just depends on how about you go about it in D&D, but yeah, that's generally how they're made.
So if I wanted to make a flesh golem in the shape of Sonic the Hedgehog, I could do that?
If that is your wish, then sure.
Would I have to arrange all the guts and stuff in like the exact order that they would need to be in?
I mean, not exactly, because you're just creating a frame essentially for the golem to move. So I mean, the organs inside aren't really functioning. You just sort of enchanted the entire fleshy bits of it to move. It's not.
You're just making the shape.
Yeah, it's like it's almost undead, but it's not. I don't know where that line is in undead and construct, but you sort of just build a robot out of flesh. That's essentially what you're doing.
Just but it doesn't have to have like the organs in place in order to function.
Right.
So it's basically like a paper mache flesh monster.
Basically, yeah. You just find any bits of flesh and limbs and what have you, and
maybe
there you
flesh,
go.
not paper.
Yeah, see, now
Yeah.
that's an art class I would want to go to. All right, students, get out your wire. All right, make the shape you want. Now you want to apply the flesh just like this. That's right. Get it all over. I think that would be tough. You'd have to be a real artiste in order to make a flesh golem because you have to be good at stitching and you'd have to have like shape in mind and all this other stuff. It'd be difficult. Don, do you think you could make a flesh monster?
No, probably not.
All right. Well, here's my next question on the whole Frankenstein's monster thing. Is that all right? Let's say scientifically this was all possible. You were able to get all these body parts, start them back up with a bolt of lightning, and it was able to function properly. So if I took the right leg from the Flash and like the left leg from uh, Hawkeye, and I had him run, would one leg be running faster than the other?
I feel like it wouldn't have the power anymore of Flash. It would just at that point be a human leg.
No, but hypothetically, if it could keep its powers, would it just be the leg, or would it be both legs that would be able to run at the same speed?
I would say the leg.
Just the one, but it
Yeah.
could run the same speed as the other leg. Flash can move normally.
No, I know he can move normally, but like if he wanted to move at super
He's wanting to
speed,
go.
yeah, because I'm just imagining like like a flesh monster, like essentially skipping with one leg down the street at like super high speeds while his other leg is dangling behind him.
But then wouldn't it destroy like the part of the body that doesn't have that ability?
See, that's what I'm wondering. Well, I mean, the Flash can have other people move with him. Like he can
Okay.
carry people. So it doesn't necessarily, but like I don't think his body needs to
Well,
be.
doesn't he have to eat like a lot?
He does, yeah.
So what would that mean for
The Flesh monster.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do flesh monsters eat?
They don't.
They don't eat?
They don't.
Oh.
They're constructs. They don't need any sort of sustenance. They just live because the magic told them to.
Okay, but
If you're not
no,
not
but
working
see,
having to
J-
keep up with nutrition, I feel like it would be fine in that sense. But the rest of the body won't be able to move like that.
did you ever see the Invader Zim episode where Zim eats a bunch of human organs in order to make himself appear more human?
No.
That's what I imagine a flesh monster would do. I imagine a flesh monster, in order to feel more alive, it would just start stealing random organs from people and just like putting them inside itself.
It's a supernatural episode.
Everything's a supernatural episode.
Fair
So
enough.
how do we not get copyrighted in all this?
How can it not be copyrighted? Well, because monsters are public domain.
Yeah, and we're giving credit to the things we're referencing.
That's
Okay, cool. Just making sure.
Well,
That can be-
also, well, it's actually interesting because the reason why, if you ever watch like old horror movies and new horror movies and compare them, the reason why Frankenstein's monster appears different in like a bunch of different movies is because the actual design of the monster itself is under copyright. So like the older like monster MGM movies or whatever, they have the bolts sticking out of its neck. So that look is copyrighted by that studio. Whereas say something from the new Frankenstein movie, I Frankenstein or whatever it was called, where he has that sort of like tough human look, that look is copyrighted by that studio. However, the actual monster itself is public domain.
Good to know. So if we're looking at statting said Frankenstein, because that, as far as I know, is not statted out.
A Frankenstein's monster?
Yeah.
See, now it would be interesting because I would feel like you could have a lot of fun and creativity with this because I feel like a Frankenstein's monster, I feel like all its different body parts should contribute different stats.
I agree.
Like if you give this creation like vampire eyes, then it should have the stats of vampire eyes, essentially, like that kind of ability.
Like the dark vision.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I feel like any like magical essence, if it were made from magical beings, would come from that of the brain.
Yeah, I would say so because I don't think individual. Well, some individual body parts are magical, aren't they? Depending on the creature.
Like claws. Could
Right.
be poisoned or whatever. And
That would poison, yeah, but like as far as any magic that comes from this being.
yeah,
Oh,
I
like
guess I'm thinking of
magical
like
abilities,
sloths.
like casting spells and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that should definitely come from the brain. Are we saying that we could take different like if we could take different parts of people's brains and merge them together into one brain?
I would say
Just one brain?
yeah.
All right. Well, here's actually going along with that train of thought. If you take somebody's brain and you put it in this body, then isn't that person still alive because their brain, like their personality is just put into a different body, so it would just be them but in a different place.
It's
Yeah.
interesting that you mention that because to create a golem in D&D sense,
Mhm.
part of the components to create a golem is that you need a spirit from the elemental plane of Earth that sparks the life inside a golem. However, that spirit doesn't retain any memory, personality, or history.
Unlike
So it's just basically like a blank soul, essentially.
Yeah, basically. So that's what I would imagine what would happen if you like infused someone's brain into the golem.
well, with a Warforge, the soul keeps memories, correct?
Yes.
It's very yeah more so.
It keeps memories from
More
the
often.
time it was alive. So, yeah, a warforge can have memories depending on when it was made. So,
Because I was just kind of keeping that in mind with my thought process through this. This is more a fleshy Warforge.
doesn't that make pretty much? I mean, doesn't that make a warforge a golem too, basically? Because I mean, what defines a golem? Because if we think about it, Frankenstein's monster is just a different version of a golem. It's like a golem mixed with a zombie, but it gets to keep its intelligence and independence in some regards. So, what defines a golem as a golem?
Well, I think it's also important talking about the whole soul thing, that a brain is different from a soul or spirit too. So when it comes to keeping memory, maybe that's why Frankenstein's monster gets to keep some memory, is the brain is different.
Well, in the book, he doesn't have any memory of his past life, and that's why I was wondering if we're talking in like a real world sense, if we were actually able to transfer one brain from one body to another, then shouldn't that brain be able to retain its personality and memories?
Yes, I think so.
So, depending if we're creating our own D&D Frankenstein golem monster, depending on what brain we use would determine its personality type and memories, right?
Sure.
So essentially, we could create a husk and that could keep your character and enhance your character alive theoretically forever. Because you could just keep creating new bodies and then just keep transferring your mind over and over again.
That brings it back to Warforge, as if or the Warforge, because Trey, you did that in the campaign, didn't you?
Yes, one of my characters had passed away, and we transferred its soul into a Warforge that had been found. But there was still a soul in the core of the Warforge, so there was kind of some conflict there.
Wait, does that mean that my Warforged character could be alive? Could I bring him back?
If somebody wants to retrieve said soul in whatever other plane that soul went to, by all means, sure.
Adam, where did my Warforged soul go? Did it go to heaven or whatever D&D's version of heaven is?
Well, it depends if it was a follower of God or of a god, and if it wasn't, it probably would get lost in the Shadowfell until it got filed into whatever other plane it would go to.
Oh my gosh, guys, we need to stop the podcast right now. We need to gather our players, and we need to go find my Warforge's soul immediately. This is priority 1.
Didn't you have your Warforged sacrifice himself?
That was before I knew I could bring him back.
What? That doesn't make any sense.
Now that I know that theoretically my Warforged could live forever, I could have been like a kamikaze Warforged.
Oh my goodness.
Now that would be a character. Could you imagine a kamikaze Warforged where the party just had like a bunch of different Warforged husks ready, and each one was just equipped with like a high explosive that would just run in the enemy's battle lines and explode?
It's very interesting that you mentioned that about Warforges, because Warforges can be brought back to life very cheaply. In fact, with like no price at all.
See? So that is 100% what you could do. But, but like with a golem, would it also be that simple? I don't know.
No, it's a different kind of magic that we're working with here. Because they aren't technically living things. They're designed to be constructs.
So I guess my thing would be like, but like Warforges and like Frankenstein's monster, those would all, because I feel like there is a title for that type of creature / monster, and I feel like they fall under the golem title.
I would say maybe like a subtitle, sure, but like an overall golem, their purpose is not to be a living thing, nor have free will or a personality.
No, I know. I'm saying that they would be like subgenres of golem, but I feel like overall it's basically just a golem, but with different mechanics behind it.
Yeah,
exactly.
I would agree with that.
So Frankenstein's monster is just like a golem made out of science, and then a Warforge is a golem made from a spirit that gets to keep all of its individuality, and then a regular golem is just a construct that is designed to serve.
Yep. Pretty much the gist of it all, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, my next question would be, because it's fun to think about with golems, the different things you could do with its individual body parts. So like, what if you wanted to make a Warforged with like really huge hands, like really huge arms that gave it like a superior boost in strength, and then like its legs were like had like wheels on the bottom to give it extra speed or something like that. Like you could do that technically.
Yeah, I mean there are different versions of Warforges in D&D. There's Titans, which span like 15 feet tall, and they're massive in size. Then you have Colossus Warforges, which are even taller. They're like 80 feet tall, and each leg is like 20 feet wide. Yeah, things like that probably exist. Given like rollerblades.
But if we're going by that logic, then getting back to like Frankenstein's monster, and in general, just kind of these construct flesh golems, if you will. Like if part of your body came from, say, a supernatural being or a superhuman being, and the other part didn't, like let's say one arm came from like the Hulk and the other arm just came from a regular dude, then how would your overall body react to something like that? Like, wouldn't it reject the sort of supernatural DNA and just accept the normal DNA? Or do you think that the body would acclimate itself with your newfound strength and kind of adjust itself thusly?
Well, let's put it in a D&D sense. Say your arm came from an ogre or something like that. I feel like it would still have the power behind it, like the strength behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that part would still have the strength, but like if you punch through a wall with that arm, and but the rest of your body was like a normal human body, but your one part of your arm was like the arm of an ogre, then wouldn't your body be flung forward from the force of your punch, because it's not like the weight distribution would be off, I guess is my point.
Yeah, I think it look kind of. It'd be weird. I mean, there's weird like creatures and flesh golems look gross to begin with and might look weird, and so I get what you're saying. Like the be
Yeah.
unbalanced.
Right. So when you create this, so like I feel like when you create golem, um, you have to make sure that all of its parts are evenly
Like sized, yeah.
right, like evenly distributed, because you couldn't realistically create a golem with like huge forearms and but like a tiny frame and then expect it to fight correctly.
Yeah.
Like imagine again, just to bring up the Hulk, like imagine if the Hulk just had like a tiny torso, but its arms were still, Hulk size. It wouldn't be able to do anything.
And that brings up a question of like, all right, so we're talking about this is based on magic, but if we go back to like science, I mean, people get organ transplants all the time, right? But it has to match them to an extent, or their body rejects it. So what's keeping Frankenstein's monster from rejecting its parts? Are they like, did he take the time to consider that?
I don't think that in the actual
In the
Frankenstein lore that there was any kind of he just picked the parts that he thought looked best. He didn't pick the parts that actually matched. Like there was no blood testing. And that's another thing I have to wonder is how would you get blood pumping through something like that? Because like what isn't it our heart that pumps blood and makes blood, or what makes blood?
Bone marrow makes blood. The heart moves it.
Okay, so if you have a dead body, like a dead corpse that you stitch together and you're trying to reanimate, it definitely wouldn't work because it wouldn't have blood flowing through it.
Right.
Well, making more sense obviously with the magic, but in the reanimating process, the blood would then be pumping through the body.
Right, but in a scientific sense, it wouldn't work like that unless like even if you had blood like in like an IV bag and you were pumping blood through it that way, it still wouldn't work that way, right?
I mean, it would go in, but you would need the body to, like, if you got the heart started, and this is all going from if you got the body very, very quickly, and if you got everything quickly, everything matches up, then the blood would then be able to pump through, I would say. But that's all a bunch of this and that and this have to happen.
Yeah. And all the bones would have to match too, like in the different parts, because if you get different blood types, then the body's going to attack itself.
So would you say that Frankenstein's monster is something that could realistically happen? Because I don't think, I think it would all be too circumstantial to actually work. And I also just don't think that you could bring a body back to life like that.
Well, that's the same sense as why they don't do brain transplants, because like that's not right.
Whatever happened to the dude that was gonna get a head transplant?
I don't think it.
What?
You guys don't remember that? There was a guy who was like preparing his body for a head transplant where they were gonna put his head on a different body. And I remember at one point everybody was talking about it, but I don't know what happened with it. I think he died or it didn't work out.
I remember that as well, and I think it just did not happen.
Yeah, I can't imagine the medical community being like, yeah, this is ethically reasonable.
Yeah, no doctor's gonna risk their license.
Right.
Yeah,
so I mean, just to put like a final, or not even a final nail, but just to put a pin in it for now, who here agrees that, or who here thinks that Frankenstein's monster is a realistically obtainable monster in a scientific sense?
Not at all.
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere in the world some psychopath has attempted this.
Like some mysterious, crazy person, like out in the woods somewhere trying to.
Well, think like like early years when for medical science, all this crazy stuff that they tried with like twins, for example, the experiments where they would hurt one twin to see what happened to the other. I'm sure that they tried this at that point.
Yeah, I feel like it's been tried with no success, but it has
absolutely.
If it has been tried, then they've kept it a secret for a very long time.
Yeah. And if it hasn't been tried, I feel like in some sense someone will try it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that. I mean, I would think at some point maybe an attempt would be made because I mean, people have tried cryogenics, right, to
Yeah.
freeze themselves until
Mhm.
they have like a cure for whatever disease they have and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that would really. I don't even know if that works. I think that's also just science fiction. I wouldn't know.
Well, people that are freezing themselves because of whatever illness or whatever, they're also expecting a way for them to be unfrozen to be found because there's not a way to do it now. So they're not only are they looking for a cure for their disease, but they're also looking for a way to be unfrozen.
But is the body still alive?
No, I mean they're dead. They're frozen.
No, that's
Okay,
all-
so but
they were frozen and they died with the thought that eventually scientific advances will be made that when they unfreeze me, I will not be dead.
but that's not how that works.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so then would those people be considered Frankenstein-esque monsters if they were able to actually bring them back?
Well,
I mean,
they're all still one person.
yeah, they're still all one person, but I feel like the one thing that I have real trouble with is just being able to bring a body that far gone fully back.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't see it ever happening. I wouldn't invest my money in it.
No, it just sounds like a huge scam. Like, all right, first we're going to kill you, and one day we'll bring you back to life. Who knows?
Well, I don't think they kill the people. I think the people die, and then like it's like instead of being cremated or buried, they have their body frozen.
Like they electively said, freeze me.
I don't think it's legal to kill people. You know what I mean? Assisted suicide is illegal, so.
That's true. But then that brings up even more questions. Like, how soon after they die are they transported to the cryogenics facility? Do cryogenics facilities have like a hospital inside them so that people who are like, I'm going to die, and they're like, all right, so you'll die at like this time, and then we'll just pop you in the freezer. Like, the whole thing just it ticks me off because every way you look at it, it just doesn't seem like it's going to work out in your favor at all, and you're probably spending a lot of money to do it.
Yeah, well, at the same time, like if you're dead and you don't need the money, right?
I guess not.
Like at that point for them, it's like,
What do you have to lose?
if I'm brought back to life, awesome. If I'm not, oh well, I'm dead anyway.
All right, we're getting a little off track from the point. I just have one more thing I want to bring up on the idea of being cryogenically frozen.
Okay.
If you're going to cryogenically freeze yourself, then you're doing it with the expectation that someday you're going to come back. Does that mean that your bank account is open that entire time, so you can keep accruing interest and money?
Well, that would be a question of like the government if they recognize the person is still existing, which I would think that they would not. Maybe that's some kind of deal with the company that does the cryogenics. Maybe they keep a certain amount of your money for you in case you come back.
Maybe,
Like,
but imagine how awful that would be. You come
I
back
have
to
no
life,
idea.
and now you're dirt poor, and you're probably gonna and you're like in this completely new environment, and you have no idea like the history or anything that's been going on since you've been frozen. So you don't know how anything works, like the economy and new jobs and stuff like that. So like you're screwed no matter what you do.
Especially
But-
if you were an elderly person and you died and they froze you and brought you back to life, like you'll probably just kill over the next 4 days.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're not being saved. You're not like immortal. You're just being saved from whatever specific disease is killing you. So it would really only be worth it if you were like a person in their 20s or something.
Say Walt Disney came back in 30 years, he'd probably be like, oh crap, this is crazy.
He'd probably be the richest man in the world. He'd probably be like, "Oh, dip, awesome! My company owns everything now. Cool. Guess I'll just go collect my stock options and whatnot." And but enough about if we can get on a huge tangent about cryogenics and all that stuff. I still think that we should call those people like, at least in some sense, they're kind of like golems because I mean they were dead and they came back, but
Well, then you could say that about anyone that's resuscitated.
that's true. That's true. I guess it'd be more like zombies then.
Yeah, I was about to mention that.
Yeah, because Dawn, is that an acceptable form of a zombie for you?
Well, what defines a zombie?
Okay.
And we'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Moving on. So all right. So if we were gonna come up with a golem in D&D, then like I said before, a couple of like maybe 15 minutes ago. I don't know when we got in the whole cryogenically frozen thing, but I think it would be cool if like each body part specifically had its own stats and abilities. So what would the ultimate D&D golem look like?
Oh.
Like try to think of the most unkillable, most unfair thing you could possibly think of.
Okay, well, let's just start at a body part and think of things that.
Well,
You know what I
I
mean?
would say the head of a dragon would be pretty OP there.
Oh, but it's still got to be balanced too. A head of a dragon's going to be really big.
yeah.
Yeah,
Place
maybe
to start.
maybe ahead of a drake.
Or maybe a young dragon. Doesn't have to be an old one.
Okay.
Could a young dragon still
Story
breathe fire
things.
and stuff? Like, would it still have a breath attack?
Right. Where does that breath attack come from?
Well, I does it come from like the lower neck? There's something in it that does that.
I mean, you could always physically, or not physically, but like magically infuse a spell into it because the spell Dragon Breath exists in Dungeons and Dragons. So you could, if it
Yeah.
doesn't retain that ability, you could definitely enchant that spell into its.
But would it be as
Mouth.
powerful?
Probably not.
So that's what we're trying to think of. If we could try and make it as naturally powerful as we can without the use of so many enchantments, then that would be the goal.
I mean, it could happen because iron golems have a poison breath that are probably in the same range as like an adult green dragon's poison breath. Probably a little weaker, but
do you think that having that kind of dragon, like if we were to take like the head of a young dragon, and use it, do you think that the enchantment would be increased because of that? Like because it has the I don't know what you would call it, but it has the appendage of a dragon to boost it.
I guess it would all depend on your DM. But as me being a DM, I would say sure. I don't see why not.
All right. Well, let's just hypothetically say for now that if we were to enchant a dragon-headed golem with its breath attack, that it would be about as powerful, maybe a bit weaker than that of a normal dragon. Because if we were going to use a normal dragon, we would have to get the organs as well, because that's where the breath comes from.
Well,
I think.
there's I cannot remember what rendition this is from, but there was it's all in the neck. There's like a liquid that is made, which is all in the neck, which is fused with some sort of spark of fire that creates the fire.
Okay.
All right. So you're saying head and neck of the dragon.
Yeah, like starting like it's like if you think of like a man's Adam apple, it was like in that region of their neck is where it came from.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, that would be great for like attack, but what if we wanted the head of something that could breathe underwater?
If
Well,
it's a
we can-
golem, it doesn't
go
need to
to-
breathe.
Ah, fair enough.
True.
Golems don't need air, Dawn, because they don't have brains, so they don't need oxygen to flow through them.
All right.
But yeah, that sounds like reasonable enough. What would the torso be made out of? Because I was thinking something like a minotaur's body.
It doesn't all have to be flesh. If you want to match material, like be made of some sort of metal, or
Well,
stone.
what's the strongest material in D&D? Because if that's the case, then we should make it out of that.
Or at least, you know.
The one that comes to my mind, adamantine metal.
Is there anything that can break that? Like, is there any creature that could?
That's a good question. I haven't really looked into that a whole lot. I would probably imagine some sort of greater or lesser deity could. Probably the Trask. That is like the.
Hey, the body of a Tarrasque, I'm okay with that.
That would be huge.
Good luck. Because those things don't actually die. So
The question would be, do we want it to be, I mean, how big do we want it? Do we want it to be like regular size, or do we want it to be like a colossus almost?
Wait a second, guys. Head of a hydra,
Ooh.
Whoa.
now,
neck of a hydra. Where is the hydra's ability located to regrow its heads?
now
Probably in its body. I can't imagine that it's in its neck in order to.
here's the DM part of me coming out, is that you aren't actually using living piece. Like, it's not actually a living creature, so it's not like its genetics would like come into play and regrow heads.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't think that would, like, for an enchantment wise to create like a fire breath for like a dragon's head, I would say because you're using a dragon's head, it would have that little bit of oomph to it.
Mhm.
But you really have to go through a lot of hoops if you want a golem's head to just start sprouting extra heads. Like, that seems
Like, we can't give it like Deadpool regeneration.
basically that just seems very outlandish. And as a DM, I'd be like, all right, let's
In
talk
this
about this.
fantasy game, this
Yeah.
idea of a genetically spawning golem with Hydra heads, it's too much, all right? This is high fantasy, not fiction.
um,
I am
You-
gonna step. I'm gonna step away real quick because there is a D&D book I'm gonna look for that there is actually like a construct dragon that I'm gonna look at. So I'll be right back.
okay.
All right. Adam has left the podcast officially. He is no longer a member. He is out.
Dang.
I'm professional. No, I'm just messing. Okay. Well, aside from torso, what about arms? Where would the arms come from? And we can make them out of different stuff. So left arm, right arm.
Are the arms also including the hands?
That's a good question. I guess I would say
Because
so.
I think one of the maybe sloths would be cool for the claws.
I was going to suggest a slot as well.
You mean the-
At
Perhaps
least for one. Sorry, what did you
Because
say?
it could
Jay?
turn them. It could turn its. Yeah, because that would actually be good because then it would decrease. It would have like a permanent status effect essentially.
like the foe that we had faced last week. It was in fact a blue slot stats.
Right.
And the only reason I knew that is because we have faced way too many slots in the past. But it has that effect of the poison that turns it into a slot.
Yeah, that seems like it would be a good ability to have.
Mm-hmm.
So that's at least one of the arms. Is
what
a
about-
sloth.
What about the other one? Now that I feel like there's not too many creatures where like the arm is necessarily an important factor in its abilities. What if we gave it a really tiny arm? Like so it had one giant arm and then one really tiny arm.
No.
That's possible.
What if we gave it like something that had like webbed hands or something for swimming? I don't know why I keep coming back to water, but
Mm-hmm.
Because you want it to be all terrain.
yeah. Give it
Yeah,
one wing.
we could give it like a lizard man's arm.
Lizard folk or something.
Yeah, lizard folk arm. That way it could at least swim fast with one hand.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my only other issue would be wouldn't the other hand kind of slow it down?
Well, you can swim with one arm. Like when you're carrying somebody, like you can only use one arm to swim.
Right. It wouldn't be as fast if both of them were lizard folk arms, but it would still be faster than if neither of them were, right?
I guess that's fair. Yeah. Okay, so then what would its legs be made out of? And I feel like the legs have to be made out of the same thing. I don't feel like we can have two.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like the legs would have to be the
Going
same.
back to the Flash, like you were talking about, it would have to be the same, because that's something that you can't have. That wouldn't work.
Right.
It really would terrify whoever's up against this thing. Slap on the spider legs. I mean,
Ooh,
Oh.
now
Like a
that would be cool.
it'd be
Because
terrifying.
then it could climb on walls and
Exactly.
stuff.
Yeah. We'd just start climbing up the side of the walls, and I mean, anybody coming into your like territory, they just nope out of there. Like that'd be.
that reminds me of an episode of The Group Adventures of Billy and Mandy where they were going up against a bunch of spider demons, and one of the spider demons was like a cow spider demon.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but that image just popped, like what we're making right now, just popped in my head. Where it's like this weird amalgamation demon spider thing.
I was more imagining a drider, but whatever.
That's what I was saying. That's what I said as well.
Oh, okay.
So are we gonna go with spider legs then, or?
Absolutely.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Like
Would
a
it
dry.
also have the butt of a spider then, so it could spin webs?
Yes.
Okay. Just trying to get the full picture here. But we need to decide what the torso is going to be made out of. Are we going to
Adam,
make it out of that metal, that really strong metal?
You can. I found the that construct dragon. It's actually made out of a different metal. Metal that
What's
I'm
it
not
made out of?
entirely too sure how to pronounce. It's either Chardalin or Cardalin.
In the Mythos book.
I am looking at the Icewind Dale book.
Oh, yeah, my bad. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
I was looking at that for the minis.
Which I don't know if that's necessarily the strongest metal, but reading up on what that metal is used for, it's used for a lot of like wands and staves and other magical.
Would you
items.
say it's like a high tier metal then?
For infusing magic, yeah, I would say.
Well,
You're
let's just say that whatever torso we use like the highest tier metal that we can find, because I feel like whatever torso we pick would because I can't think of anything that would necessarily work unless we go with like a giant or cyclops or something.
Fair enough.
Interesting. Well, it looks like that metal that I mentioned before is infused with demonic magic.
Oh.
Ooh.
Oh.
Mm.
So if you want to give
So we'd have like a demon dragon spider, essentially is what we made. A demon dragon spider golem is essentially what we made with the left arm of a slad and the right arm of a lizard folk. What would its AC be?
Hi.
High. Would it be above 20, do you think?
Well,
I don't know
actually,
about-
if it's that big, if it's gonna be like kind of big, I guess it shouldn't be high.
Mm-hmm.
Right, unless whatever armor you're like attaching to it, like if all of its armor is made of that metal and you made it like thick, to where it's not, damaging the vital parts of this construct, then you can make it high. But if it's
True.
just like a standard layer and it's large, I'd say it's probably like 16 or 17.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that its legs would probably be its weakest part of its body.
Probably.
So it would probably have to have like weird spider shin guards essentially attached to it to make sure that nobody could just cut through its legs.
Unless you find some like really large spider where that like chitin or keratin is thick.
Well,
Yeah.
the size of a drider's legs they're like
Yeah, they're pretty
Twist.
sizable.
yeah.
But I mean, some spiders are larger that exist.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to find pretty big legs if the torso is gonna be metal. Like, how's it gonna hold
That's
that up
true.
if it's
Yeah.
a scrawny spider?
Yeah. Maybe you can reinforce it with like extra bones or something. Like maybe there's a way to fuse bone mass together so it just keeps adding on.
Yeah.
Just keep fusing it. That, by the way, that was the sound of my magic noise effect sound effect.
Oh, okay.
Noted for future reference.
Yes. So basically, to kind of put a wrap on what we've been talking about, essentially, what we're saying is that realistically, golems can only exist in a magical context, because
Right.
scientifically, even if they were to exist, it would have to be like a very timely, very carefully thought out procedure that almost definitely wouldn't work.
Agreed.
Yep.
Closest
So I
thing
guess
you would have to a golem would probably be robots.
now that brings up the question: is a robot a golem? Probably, I would say yes, because it is designed with a purpose, and it does not move outside of that purpose. So I guess a robot would be a golem.
Like, robots are like, I don't want to say metal because robots aren't completely metal, but man-made synthetic things, golems,
Yes, I would say
plastic and metal golems.
so. Plastic and metal golems. This is my
Silicone, maybe, I
Tupperware
don't know.
golem. It'll keep all of your food fresh. So that's a good point, Adam. I hadn't. Is our computers golems? Is our TV a golem?
No.
No.
Are we gonna have to get into a huge discussion about what constitutes a robot? Because now I'm energized. What makes a robot a robot? This might be a discussion for another episode, but I feel like since we're on the topic of golems, are we saying that just like full autonomous robots are those golems? I would have to say yes, based on the definitions that we came up with and that already exist.
The common thing between golems and robots is that they're used for a purpose of what a human can do, right?
Right.
So I think that's where your definition is for what's a robot. So like a computer wouldn't be a robot. Robots are computerized. Wow.
Okay, but so an assembly line for like making a car where they have like robot arms moving and stuff like that. Would you consider those to be golems?
To an extent, yeah.
To an extent, yeah. So scientifically, robots are definitely possible. So I guess a golem could exist in real life, but
Not a
like,
flesh
right,
golem, though.
but not like a Frankenstein's monster golem. I don't think that's ever going to be possible personally. But
Be a
maybe
really disgusting individual and like have like the skin of your robot made of flesh.
Oh my
Ew.
God.
Down that route.
No, now we're getting okay.
Those
no,
are cyborgs.
Yeah, no, those are androids. No, right, Don. Sorry, those are cyborgs.
I thought cyborgs were half human, half robot. Like you have like a human brain, and then some of your brain is like robotic computing.
Oh, so you're talking about specifically like if you like skinned a human and put it over a robot.
Yeah, basically. If that's
So just
the route you want to
kind of like a decal skin on your PlayStation 5. It's just going to be like a decal over your robot.
Sure.
But then how would the skin survive?
It wouldn't. You have to change it out every couple of months.
Less than.
No, that's a horror movie I would watch. Are you kidding me?
So I guess golems exist. We just call them robots.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
true.
guess essentially robots are the modern day golem, and robots in the fantasy world are golems. They're the same thing.
Right. So robots are just like a subgenre of golem.
Because it's a certain material.
Or a
Yeah.
type.
Right. It's a different process for making it.
I'm sure there's gonna be somebody somewhere that would probably criticize this and be like, "You guys are dumb." But I mean,
But no, I feel like that's a logical conclusion to this is that like human golems can exist, but like in the real world. But we've made like robot golems.
Yeah.
Like we've made robots with basically the same sort of guidelines that define a golem.
yeah, they serve the same purpose. And
Wow, we live in a truly magical world.
We're awesome.
Maybe one day, maybe we have a vampire equivalent in the real world. A hemophiliac would be the opposite of a vampire, I think. Like the anti-vampire would be a
They
hemophiliac.
lose blood instead of taking
Yeah.
blood.
Exactly. And then I guess the opposite of werewolf would just be like a panther.
Yeah.
It's a big cat. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of big cats.
Guys, let's make the big cat
And-
podcast.
Hold on. First of all, you compared a werewolf to a cat instead of a wolf
Dogs.
or
Or wolf.
dogs. You went to a cat.
Well, no, because we were talking about
Same
opposites,
opposite.
like the opposite of a vampire.
Oh, I understand.
So the opposite of a like if we're talking like do werewolves like is there a werewolf equivalent in the real world? There's not like a human that turns into a wolf, but if we're talking about like by like sheer size and power, I'm pretty sure that there are people who breed like dire wolves essentially, like just really big dogs that would pretty much have around the same abilities, I would think. And then for vampires, I guess we would have mosquitoes would be the real world equivalent of that.
There's vampire bats.
Yeah, but they don't
That would
drink.
be closer.
But they don't drink blood, do they?
Yeah, they do. There's
No,
fruit
they
bats.
don't.
There's vampire bats. Yeah, they do.
No, I'm gonna look this up.
Okay.
Okay.
But if we're talking about vampires and they have the ability to turn into a bat, I think vampire bats would be the closest thing we have to vampires.
Let me
Now,
see.
granted, I think those vampire bats only feed on what, the blood of small mammals.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
they
there's
feed off
stories
of-
of them like biting people's toes while they're sleeping, but
They feed off of cows, pigs, and horses.
they do drink blood.
Yes. That's hard. I don't know why I didn't think vampire bats like actually drank blood. I thought they did something else, but oh, that's horrible. You're right. I guess a vampire bat would be the real world equivalent. Sorry, I can't speak. The real world equivalent of a vampire.
It's the closest thing we've got.
Oh darn! It's Mom. Can we go to the store and get some vampires? We have vampires at home. Vampires at home. Just vampire bats. Kids, that's a meme from the year 2020. You'll have to look that up if you want to know more about it, depending on when you listen to this. Your grandparents might know a thing or two about it.
What a great throwback that was.
Anyway.
So in conclusion, robots, flesh golems, demon spider dragon golem. In conclusion, that's what we've come up with today.
Perfect wrap up.
Perfect
With
wrap
the
up.
dragon head.
With the dragon head, yes. All right, so thank you all so much for listening to Creature Clash. If you want to go back and listen to episode 0, it should be already up. And we look forward to speaking with you all next time. So long.